Whenever there is a crime, there is a motive, even when the people that are committing them have mental health issues. Sometimes the motive may have manifested itself through a delusion. You'd assume that by analyzing one's psyche, you get to the bottom of it. Unfortunately, sometimes the wires are so crossed you cannot even fathom scraping the surface of that person's thought process. Such is the case of Bryce Cherry, aka dev-catscratch. Brace yourselves for a talk about bomb threats, hacking, and plenty of PDF degeneracy. Bryce was born in Rockhampton, Queensland, Australia, on the 24th of March, 1985. Not much is known about his childhood or personal life, besides the fact that he has autism, which he often tries to raise awareness for. As stand-up comedians always say, don't clap yet, it is not as good as it sounds, when a joke ends up having a twist.
Please don't. You're not gonna like it. You're not gonna like where it's going.
You see, Bryce considers his autism to be a get-out-of-jail-free card, figuratively and quite literally. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. To get to know him better, Bryce has thankfully provided us with a very long list of his special interests. And in true autistic fashion, some of them are quite odd. Some may even call him degenerate, especially if one realizes how a lot of those interests are interlinked. It would be tough only to mention a few of them, since they all seem to be vital in understanding his brain, but to keep it as short as possible, we will mention the most important ones that will be crucial for this video. So in between his interests in lethal accidents and sexual deviancy, the following are included. Fart lighting. He especially quotes the scene in Dumb and Dumber as his inspiration. Very cringe, but let's move on. Something he calls illegally copied cartoon shows. And by that I think he means degenerate fan art. Brand name condoms with logos like BMW, and ones inspired by a 1992 Australian KFC ad. I like it like that, KFC. I like it like that, was the motto. Toilet duck bottle, inspired by a news story in Brisbane, where a burglar on drugs used a toilet duck bottle as a toy. Nickelodeon, in general, and specifically Baby Nicktoons. So, Nickelodeon characters that are babies or turning older characters into babies, which coincides with his interest in diapers and in cartoons and his advocacy for breastfeeding to be normalized in such shows. As we can see from his deviant art, he describes Baby Nicktoons as so cute at such a young age. What is that? You're my puppy, Walden? No. Please delete this from my brain. He also really loves Helga from Hey Arnold. Maybe a bit too much. So much so, I'd call it the reddest of red flags. He has created and uploaded this picture that says, "Cartoon fun for adults, delivering the next generation of innovative, adult-only products with cartoon character themes with the highest degree of realism." It includes a caption stating, "A manufacturer of innovative adult-only products with cartoon character themes, next generation and having the highest degree of realism. When I was 14, I always wanted a Helga, Hey Arnold doll. And during my teenage years, I could not stop thinking Adidas with her and other cartoon characters." If you don't know what Adidas means, it means hashtag adult shop, hashtag adults only. Adults only? Helga is a child. Stay away from Helga and other kids. Honorable mentions from other interests include ecstasy pills with corporate logos, especially the Mitsubishi logo. Those pills were popular in the 2000s rave scene, but somehow truly sparked his interest and caused him to be obsessed with the company Mitsubishi itself. His other obsession is McDonald's. He specifically mentions a parody of McDonald's, I'm loving it, into I'm lugging it. B Nickelodeon campaign, inspired by a B Marlboro campaign, which kind of ties to his obsession with cartoon characters smoking. And bump bows, which are stickers women put on their belly buttons when they're pregnant. He found this item while searching for shows that depict breastfeeding, which again he stresses to reassure us is natural and not offensive.
Breastfeeding of babies in cartoons. Natural, not offensive.
The affirmation research led him to the What to Expect website, which he thoroughly went through until he found bump bows. And finally, the one interest from which he got his username from. The Nickelodeon cartoon Cat Scratch, a series about three anthropomorphic feline brothers. And yes, you will be witnessing anthropomorphic themes throughout this video, since Bryce seems to be obsessed with them. Bryce has a YouTube channel that doesn't have many subscribers or views overall, even though he has been posting for years. On there, the theme is kind of confusing. I guess you'd call it a mashup of random thoughts on subjects. There are a lot of videos that are tech related, which seem to be getting the most views, probably because they are his most normal ones, along with other videos about cartoons, autism, and, well, random videos about how you should behave, because Bryce, as you will eventually notice, never thinks he has done anything wrong.
A good online citizen always listens to and addresses the concerns of its critics. The issue raised by your critics could affect you as a whole. Instead of silencing them, maintain an open line of communication to deal with the issue raised. If you don't do that, all things can go wrong.
He mostly rose to notoriety because of his DeviantArt account though, where he would post bizarre fan art, which some have described as fetish content. Since he's autistic, he can't help but truly let his interests reflect through his art and other posts. Because of how interconnection works in the autistic mind, he seems to be able to create a mush of all these ideas. Here's an example. He seems to have an affinity for the quote,
Showing how you smile to gain the confidence of a child.
from the 2001 Hannibal movie, and mentions it while combining it with different themes in several posts. To highlight why this quote is essential to the plot, you'd have to know the scene it's from. In this scene, Mason Verger talks to Clarice about how Hannibal attacked him. Mason Verger was a sex offender who had molested children and abused animals. He had several fetishes, and amongst them was, Carradining himself. I don't know if you have looked into David Carradine's death, but it has been said it was due to autoerotic asphyxiation. Anyway, so how the story goes is that after Mason's arrest, Hannibal was appointed as his psychiatrist. Hannibal went to Mason's home so Mason could show him his toys and explain his fetishes. Mason showed him his news and the process of autoerotic asphyxiation. Hannibal drugged him and then said, Mason, show me how you smile to gain the confidence of a child, and suggested he peel his face off with a piece of broken mirror, which the drugged and susceptible to suggestion Mason did. No one has empathy towards people like Mason, so one could argue that Bryce could be obsessed with the scene because of strong feelings of justice and vengefulness towards such individuals. But why with a specific quote though? And why would he want to include this quote so much in other elements he enjoys, like BoJack Horseman? You can see some examples here, including some other interests of his. Such things are a mystery to me, even though I can understand how information is linked in the autistic mind. But maybe we're missing some links here. Maybe we can get more info from his DeviantArt and interest list. It is difficult to add structure to such a complicated state of mind like his. So let's start with what may be his favorite subject out of all. Bump bows. As mentioned earlier, bump outs are stickers for belly buttons of pregnant women. Bryce loves drawing them on his favorite animations, some of which happen to be children. His obsession with bump outs has expanded towards navels in relation to pregnancy and childbirth. It seems one of his favorite questions is, can you give birth through belly buttons? What is funny though is that he knows the answer to it and he keeps answering it himself. As if this isn't odd enough. Bryce thinks that this is a question everyone should be pestered with. He has claimed that children seem to ask this question a lot. Do they? Do they, Bryce? I doubt it. Maybe if you are a parent, you could write in the comments down below if your child has ever asked you this question. The thing is, Bryce definitely wants kids to be educated on those things, including breastfeeding. He also wants bump outs to be used aside from their intended use. In this post particularly, he mentioned ways this could happen. I won't show it on screen, but the links included in this post are from social media of a bump out store that had posted two topless toddlers wearing bump outs. As you can understand, their usual target group was very sweet in the comments, completely ignoring that childless people like Bryce could be promoting those pictures for other purposes. He generally seems to be eerily preoccupied with children, pregnancy, and many things tied to these subjects. He's visiting several websites regarding these and even uses KidRex, a safe search engine designed for kids. Apparently, people like Bryce happen to use these engines as well. Lastly, I think it is kinda creepy he connects the brand Adidas, which he has previously used in creepy context towards Helga, with bump outs, which he relates to childbirth. I feel like I do not want to know the depth to this connection, but I fear that I don't have the luxury of ignorance at this point. So all this obsession with children and his showing how much he cares about them and topics related to them, one may think, wow, Bryce really does seem to be loving children a whole lot. Specifically so much that in 2007, he allegedly hijacked Wi-Fi's in a neighborhood and threatened to massacre school children, specifically from the school he went to when he was young. Aside from that, he allegedly threatened to bomb Tiger Air flights and kill the Morning Bulletin's editor and his family. The Morning Bulletin is the newspaper we are reading this from. It is now only available through the Wayback Machine, although it used to be a local Rockhampton newspaper that ceased activity in 2020. Bryce allegedly tried to extort them for 50,000 Australian dollars. As it seems, he once again used his autism as an excuse, and the Mental Health Board found him unfit to stand trial. I don't know the laws in Australia and what would constitute evidence for one to be considered unfit for a trial there. Would the autism diagnosis be the main reason? Bryce seems to be able to analyze very complex subjects. Aside from this, the alleged crime seems pretty meticulous. What has been a motive for many criminals is revenge towards people who bullied them, or towards members of an institution they felt bullied by. This may have been the case here, but I guess we'll never know for sure. I went on his DeviantArt to check for clues, but none of his posts seemed to be related to the situation. He was able to continue posting his typical stuff throughout this debacle. When it comes to his posting, maybe a kind soul would think he could have plausible deniability, but it may go out the window once we see some of his other alleged child-related activities. On the 16th of January 2016, a petition against child sex dolls that was standing against the import of them into Australia was created by a non-profit organization, Fighters Against Child Abuse Australia. The woman who wrote the petition is Melissa Evans. The dolls mentioned are manufactured by a company called Trotta, owned by Shin Takagi. Takagi himself has admitted to being a PDF file, especially a map, as they like to be called. MAP stands for Minor Attracted Person, and they describe themselves as PDF files that supposedly resist their urges. Takagi had the idea of making these dolls for people who, let's say, struggle, as he seems to think that they would hold someone from acting on their desires. In an interview, he insisted, "We should accept that there is no way to change someone's fetishes. I'm helping people express their desires, legally and ethically. It's not worth living if you have to live with a repressed desire." It is important to note that there has been no specific evidence concluding this. American psychologist Peter Fagan, who served as director of the Sexual Behaviors Consultation Unit at Johns Hopkins University, stressed that this may even lead to the strengthening of such ideation and result in the reinforcement of such cravings. It stands to reason that the majority of people would take issue with this. But not Brycey. Remember Melissa Evans, the person who wrote the petition? Well, Bryce decided to go on her Facebook page and allegedly threaten and harass her. In a very autistic way, nonetheless. After asking her to take down the petition by, court order? Okay, he allegedly threatened legal action, including acid seizures, against her. Kept asking other commenters if they knew how many people she has slept with, and told them to, go buy a Mitsubishi and sit on his face? He also told Melissa to do squirrels instead of this petition, lol, and went off with, with some schizobabble like saying he hopes she ends up in a Big Mac, whatever that means. Please enlighten me if you understood any of these. The worst one, though, was this comment of his stating, "Melissa Evans, why don't you close all windows and doors and vents in your house all night while running a Honda petrol generator inside your house all night?" Absolutely vile stuff. When he was asked about this on DeviantArt, he once again used his autism as an excuse, stating, "As a person with autism, I like cartoons and adult-only Nickelodeon cartoon products. I am offering a cash-only offer for someone to have her permanently removed once completed and confirmed." Her? Permanently remove her? The petition? Or Melissa? Maybe I'm going schizo, but as an autistic person myself, I do struggle to understand statements that are not clear and specific. However, Bryce's autism is no excuse for his degenerate views. Autism is intermingled with our personality. There are certain symptoms autistic people share, but essentially, we are all our own person. Everyone has different needs, ideologies, moral standards, and so on. It just so happened that Bryce's are on the dark side, but his autism itself isn't to blame. It comes to no surprise that Bryce would have a Kiwi Farms thread dedicated to him right now. Of course, he screeched harassment and bullying of autistic people, and yet again claimed that all his bad luck stems from everyone discriminating against his disability. People have repeatedly told him that it is because they consider him a degenerate who has engaged in suspicious activity. But Bryce refuses to take any accountability for his actions. The best solution to having a thread about you created in such forums is to ignore them. But Bryce just couldn't let it go. He decided to file a complaint to the domain of Kiwi Farms based on being discriminated against as a protected group. Nothing came of this, of course, and he eventually just ended up doxing himself, and Kiwi Farms resurfaced just 2 days later under a new domain. Approximately a year later, he made a video on his YouTube channel speaking out against Kiwi Farms going off on his usual tangent. They're hostile, they mock my disability, they're abusive, yada yada yada. It's boring, not gonna lie.
I have discovered unsavory discussion about me regarding having autism, which were Kiwi Farms, a hostile and abusive online environment where people are abused, harassed, and trolled based on real or perceived disability. A few months later, I was sent abusive messages on DeviantArt regarding my disability, autism, discovered that web domain names can be taken down if they violate law, and file a complaint in due course and with proper procedure. Because I was required to provide my contact details, administrators of Kiwi Farms published my contact details on the, which is a clear indication of how hostile Kiwi Farms and its administrators are. I collaborated with my father, along with the good UK lawyer Matthew Hopkins and others, in bringing Kiwi Farms and its owner, Joshua Connor Moon, who has registered a company, Locale LLC, with the state of Florida in the United States, to justice.
The only interesting part seems to be that he mentions collaborating with his father to take down Kiwi Farms, which brings us to the next point. You might be wondering, how is this okay? How come no one has ever intervened? Does he have parents? What do they do?
Who is your daddy and what does he do?
Does he live with them? How's he able to sustain himself? It could be that he's receiving disability benefits. As for his parents, I'm assuming they must be ignorant about his online activities, since they are probably boomers who have let their autistic son be unhinged for so long without intervention. And if there has been intervention, one knows for sure that it hasn't worked. Since he collaborated with his dad in taking down Kiwi Farms, his parents might only think that their precious Brycey is being cyberbullied and nothing more. Overall, there are a lot of silly things Bryce has said, but I decided to not be nitpicking since the gravity of the things I mentioned here seems to overshadow anything else, and we could probably go on and on with boring details. It is a pity that no matter how many people try to explain to Bryce that what he seems to be doing is wrong, he will continue blaming others and cry wolf. What is your opinion? Do you think Bryce could ever realize his ways? Let me know in the comments below. It's been Hikiko, and until next time, I'll be chilling in the Mori.